Good morning, folks, and welcome back to Wishwell Farms. How you doing today? My name is Jason, and today we are starting off with a little bit of sweet corn picking. Listen to them mowing through that sweet corn. Sounds like a machine out there.
They try to take every one, but like, what about like these?
Yeah, those little skinny second ears aren't quite ripe. See that? Yeah. There's so much corn out here, we don't have to worry about wasting our time with the second ears. It's nice to be back in a patch with standing corn that's not laid down from a windstorm. The variety we're picking today is Anthem. This one here is Caliber. We're going to try to save that for Monday. We got 24 rows of Anthem here, and I bet you we won't even get through half of it because it is thick out there today. The first patch along the road is Xanadu. It is kind of torn up by raccoons, and the grass pressure is terrible over there. So definitely want to get this Anthem picked before it gets any riper because it's definitely getting full. But it is still perfect corn. Beautiful corn, one of our favorite varieties. How's it yanking off the stalk, guys? Is it a little,
it's not too bad.
Little trickier to get off?
Too bad. It's a little bit harder than the last one we did.
Yeah. It's hard to beat Nirvana for ease of snapping off the stalk. But these ears are way bigger. No matter how much weed pressure you have, even off a little bit in your fertility program, Anthem's going to give you a good ear. All right, they have 6 people on their crew. That's enough to get that 300 dozen we need today. And I'm going to head back to the farm with my oldest son and my youngest daughter. And we're going to pick a few cantaloupes and start pulling some candy onions. Man, is it a beautiful day out here today. Comfortable temperatures, very low humidity. There's hardly any dew. I mean, you couldn't ask for better conditions to be out harvesting vegetables today. As you can see, I only brought one bin down because our cantaloupe planting number 2 is just not ripening up fast enough for us. I was hoping to be picking a bunch of them late last week or early this week. Today's Thursday, and I was really wanting a bunch of them for tomorrow so we could load up our farmers markets, but that is not the case. I actually had to buy 2 bins that are being delivered tomorrow to get me through the weekend for our mobile produce trailer. Now, I can't take boughten melons to our farmers markets, so since these aren't coming on good enough yet, I'm just going to have to load up the trucks with seedless watermelon instead. But that's okay. It'd be nice to move some watermelons, because when I do have to sell cantaloupes and watermelons together, I had to split the bin, and we often sell out of cantaloupes far too early. That's all right. My son has already went through here and rode up all the ripe ones. I'm just waiting for my daughter to come down. She should be down here any moment, and I'll drive the pickup truck around and we'll throw his piles into this bin. My son is currently walking through the old patch, rowing up a handful that are still left out there. I actually will be bush hogging this down today or tomorrow. They are finished. I want to get them chopped down and killed before the weeds all go to seed. Now, beside cantaloupe planting number 2 is cantaloupe planting number 3. And I actually saw one ripe one down there yesterday, so these are not far off. So I've had some comments about how I space my seedings or my plantings of cantaloupes. So planting number 1, I believe we seeded it around April 10th. We want to give them a good 4 to 5 weeks to grow a good, strong, healthy transplant. And we set those in the ground mid-May. And then that's about the same time that we're seeding planting number 2. We give them at least 3 to 4 weeks spacing between those seedings. because they will kind of catch up a little bit. But obviously this year it didn't quite work out. I should have bumped that up, 4, 5, 6 days maybe. But when I've done that in the past, then you have a warm season and then they're overlapping and you're just piled up on cantaloupes. So I would prefer to have a little space, a gap between the plantings. That way I can just concentrate on watermelons for a couple weeks. It is nice to be able to walk from planting 1 right into planting 2. And normally that's the way it works out, but not this year because of the unseasonably cool weather we've had the last 2 weeks. Planting number 3 or seeding number 3 is like 10 days after this one. And that worked out perfect this year because we're gonna be walking into that one probably, they're probably gonna overlap a little bit, but we'll be pretty much cleaned up with this one before we move into planting number 3. And then that'll be it for the season on cantaloupes. That should get us in to Labor Day weekend and maybe a little bit the weekend after. Now I used to do a 4th planting, but we have problems with our cantaloupes getting soft shelled. And we wouldn't even be able to fill our bins half full or they would bruise and get smashed on the bottom. It's just something about these cooler nights and less sunlight, you know, shorter days that do not grow good cantaloupes here in Ohio. So we have found that 3 plantings just to get us through Labor Day is a good time to quit on cantaloupes. I don't really like using a pickup truck to pick up these melons, but there's so few out here today, won't be that big of a deal. And I'm gonna catch one-handed. I need to get my chest harness out so I can mount the GoPro either to my head or my chest, and then I can use both hands. As you can see, there's quite a few cantaloupes out here. They're just all green still. They just don't ripen that fast when it gets down to mid-50s at night and only 80 during the day. But they'll come on here just in a couple more days. Fortunately, I only need about 50 or 60 for the trailer today. Hopefully we'll get that. By the way, this is my oldest son, Gavin. Almost 23 years old and finishing up his final year of college. He's going to be a nurse soon, but he helps me out a great deal on the farm during the summers. And driving up here, you've probably seen her in other videos, is my youngest child, my daughter Natalie, and she is heading off to college tomorrow. Hard to believe that all 3 of my kids are college age and older. Not too shabby. I think we got about 50 or 60 here, and they're nice sized. I'm gonna get them unloaded, get them sent through the washer, put on this trailer, and get the trailer on the road. Got some big ones today. That's like 12 pounds, 10 to 12 pounds. Give him a little push, help him get through. Every once in a while we'll get one that didn't get scrubbed clean. There we go. Five across. Some mediums on the bottom, the little jumbos on top like this. Let's just leave this one in here in case we don't want it. All right, time for the main event, pulling some candy onions. So this is what they currently look like. A lot of people don't grow their onions on plastic mulch, but we like to, so we don't have to battle the weeds so bad. We got some pretty nice size ones. I mean, they're not huge, but it's time to get them up before they start molding underground. When you see leaves starting to dry like that and the tips, time to get them pulled. And we're just gonna leave them on the plastic to dry in the sun the rest of this week, and then we'll come back next week and snip off the tops. And then after we snip the tops off, then they'll be ready to load into crates, and we will sell them at all of our farmers markets for the next 6 weeks, however many weeks we have left in the season. A lot of medium-sized onions, but there are some jumbos. These are pretty nice, normal size onions. We used to grow up to 4 rows of onions, 500 feet long, and there's 4 rows of onions on every row of plastic. So we were growing thousands and thousands of onions. Since we aren't doing pumpkins this year, we don't need that many onions. We're gonna be wrapping up our season in early October. We were down to 3 rows for a couple years, then 2 rows, and then for the last 3 years, we've just been doing 1 row. I could easily sell 2 or 3 rows worth of onions every year, but I gotta be honest with you, I don't like planting them, and no one else likes planting them, because it's a tedious, long process. And early in the spring, when we are just now laying plastic, I don't have enough help here to plant them. So that's the main reason we went down to 1 row. And it'll get us through a good chunk of the season. You know, we might be out of onions about halfway through September, maybe it might last to the end of September. So we're gonna get these all pulled and let them do their thing out in the sun. It's actually kind of an enjoyable job.
Yeah.
It's a little bit satisfying pulling them out of these little holes on the plastic. And even though we only had like a 60 or 70% stand, I think there's still gonna be a lot of onions out here. Yeah, this is gonna be one of those jobs where it'll be nice to have the rest of the guys down here as soon as they finish sweet corn, because this is gonna take a while. Seems to be plenty of moisture under the plastic. If we would have let them stay in there any longer, I'd be worried that they'd start molding or rotting on the bottom. We get all of our onion sets from Dixondale Farms in Texas. They ship them out by the box, and they're little sets, you know, about the size of your finger, maybe 5 to 6 inches long. And we have a template 2x4 with little pegs, spikes on it to pre-punch the holes, and then we just stick the sets down in the plastic. It's a pretty fast process. I believe I have a video on it, but I'm not for sure. If I can find that video, I will link it in the description of this one here. If you're wondering why I don't plant anything other than candy onions, those just seem to be the best sellers for us. We used to also plant a red one and a white one. I don't know the varieties, but they didn't sell near as good as the regular yellow candy onions, so we kind of just settled on those. For having a poor stand, we're still getting quite a few out of here. I'm pretty happy with the way they look. Of course, I'd like for them all to be a little larger, but they received no supplemental fertilization whatsoever. We put down some fertilizer before we laid the plastic, and other than that, all they've gotten is water. One thing I will mention about growing on plastic is you're still not immune to getting weeds. When the onions are starting to grow, we come through a couple different times and pull little weeds out that still pop up where the onion plant is. So there's no competition with the onion. But I'm gonna turn this camera around to show you how the morning glory has taken over. This is a really bad spot in our field. This whole half of the field is full of morning glory. I've shown it many times in a lot of my videos. The peppers are getting taken over. The tomatoes, the old melon patch, and the watermelon patch are all just a forest of purple flowers and morning glory vines. They're not fun to deal with. So you can see here, these look pretty clean. They're ready to pull out. And then you come to this mess. I've been pulling the morning glory vines off of the onion row. It's amazing how fast they take over. Because just several weeks ago, there was no morning glory on the row of onions. Any little plant that we missed growing down with the onions just takes over. And they're also growing off the edge of the plastic onto the onions. And this is a drive trail. You can see, where our tires have went. It's clean, but then they're coming back to life, even though I've sprayed them like twice. So yeah, this is a pain in the butt, but we're gonna have to pull these all off to expose the onions so we don't miss any. But once we get the morning glory vines off, it's easy picking. Fortunately, the vines are not pulling the onions out with them. The onions seem to be anchored in pretty good today because the dirt's kind of dry. I probably should have watered these last night to soften up the soil. As long as the onions aren't breaking off when we go to pull them out, it shouldn't be too big of an issue. We're already more than halfway done. There, that's like the first onion that came out with the vines. Taking a little break from the onion patch to get this corn packed up that the fellas just brought up. And we got another load of about 175 back there. We definitely got our 300 dozen, probably more like 4. Working on wagon number 2. All right, looks like we're wrapping up onion harvest in just a few minutes here. We got all the morning glory pulled out of the way. Onions are pulled out of the plastic. Now we let them dry. Oh, probably the rest of this week and most of next week, whenever we get a free day where they have not been rained on and they're nice and dry and crispy, we'll come through and trim all the tops, and then we'll load them into a melon bin, then bring them up to the barn and pack them into 1 bushel bean crates. And then we will distribute them onto the trucks throughout the farmers markets for the remainder of September and early October. I'm hoping we can fill 2 or 3 melon bins with these onions next week. Maybe 30, 40 bushels, something like that. Alrighty folks, that's a wrap on today's harvest, and this is where we're going to end today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I will see you all again real soon down on the farm.